unit for those things. So I think we have a major challenge. How do we meet this anomaly where people are investing heavily into sources which are not so efficient, which are terrible, and we should be looking at. And on the other side, we have this situation that Mr. Jayanta talked about, where energy is getting, is available, but finding no buyers. So I think we need to find a way of crossing it, and I think the regulators have a major role to play in making this happen.
What do you think, Mr. Mishra? Why are the state power regulators not able to address this issue?
The question to now, Mr. Jayant Dev has told, and you are asking this one, that today itself the 750 megawatt has given the exchange that he will be 50% is not sold. Why it is not being sold? The reason is that I will put myself that why the result is not being sold. There are buyers. He very rightly pointed out there is a diesel generator is running, there is the 750 megawatt is there, 3 rupees 50 paisa is not being sold. It is only the state regulators, we have got them, we have got to put a cross subsidy charges. If any person will buy a open access, he has to pay the cost, not only the cost of generation, but the exchanges they will pay the cost of generation. He has to pay the transmission charges, he has to pay the transmission losses, and he has to pay the cross subsidy charges. A consumer doesn't look what is the Indian exchange price is going to be. He is not looking at what is the power to cost to him. And when he finds the power to cost to him, he will add all this pancaking cost. He finds the discount tariff, the retail supply tariff given by the regulator is cheaper than what the exchange tariff will get. So he doesn't buy it from the exchange, unless otherwise, when they are not getting power at any cost, then only he will buy from the exchange. Otherwise, from the tariff side, he finds it very difficult to buy from this one. Whatever the Indian exchange, if you see this one, it is not mostly the power exchange attended by the utility, discoms utility, even the but that is not the idea of the reform, idea of the act. Idea of the act, this will take the direct consumer will go for the open access. That means those are the 1 megawatt consumers. That when he will go, who will go for that? It is a high-end consumer. High-end consumer, our tariff, a high-end consumer, if you go to open access, he has to pay the cross-subsidy charges to the discount. So that is the barrier.
We'll take a short break here. You keep watching Power News.
To turn movements into a ballet, you need a choreographer. To turn products into integrated solutions, you need Larsen & Toubro. L&T's engineering expertise, manufacturing capability, and application experience are introducing new levels of pace, performance, and convenience at major utilities around the country. Integrated solutions in electrical and automation from Larsen & Toubro.
फिर बिजली गुल, अब तो 2-4 घंटे की छुट्टी। गांव का केबल ही घटिया है।
देश में बिजली उत्पादन का लगभग 40% भाग दोषपूर्ण, घटिया केबल और बिजली की चोरी में व्यर्थ चला जाता है। क्यों न एक ऐसा पावर केबल चुने जो बिजली बचाए और शॉर्ट सर्किट का जोखिम घटाए।
सर्वोत्तम केबल रवीन केबल, प्राइम केयर, रवीन केबल्स उत्पादन।
इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीटर, switch gear, circuit breaker, MCCB, ACB, lighting, wires and cable. Innovation, technology, quality, commitment, multi-product, multi-location, a great team environment, growing new heights. HPL, the technology brand of India since 1956.
Night Riders need some runs desperately.
Go back. अरे भैया यार,
क्या कर रहा है ये? हाथ क्यों नहीं रहा है?
अरे एक तो भी क्या रखा है? अरे चौका मार, छक्का मार। Come on यार।
जब पार्टनर ही सही ना हो तो 100% परफॉर्मेंस कैसे देगा? इसी तरह 100% हाई डेफिनेशन एक्सपीरियंस के लिए आपके HD TV को चाहिए सही पार्टनर। Dish True HD, India's first with 40 HD services. Are you HD dear?
Welcome back. You're watching Power News. In today's episode, we're discussing power sector reforms key to power sector sustainability. Mr. Bhargava, what I'd like to ask you is, even after 17 years of reforms in power sector which began in 1991, many states still have ET&C losses as high as 40 to 60%, and the national average is around 35%. So every year we are planning a lot in this direction, but not much improvement has been seen. What are the major reasons according to you?
I firmly believe that we need to distinguish between AT&C and T&D, because there are different people who are responsible for this. And by clubbing them all into one, we are actually losing accountability. Over a period of time, if you look at it, some of the states have been able to bring it down substantially. So we have plenty of states, at least 4 or 5 states, where it is below 15% level today. And I think it goes to show that if there is a will available, this issue can be solved. Second is, we need to look at it, a lot of issues related to distribution, reforms in the technical reforms in the distribution sector needed to be done. We all talked about reduction of the length of the low voltage distribution networks, but while we are implementing it for new parts of it, as far as the old networks are concerned, they continue to remain the same. And I think there's one challenge. If you look at it, we'll need to overhaul just not the new part, even the old ones need to be done where the length of the low voltage networks need to be reduced. And finally, let's get back to the fundamental issue. 2003, the Electricity Act enabled private people to get into and start making a play. You had a lot of people getting into generation. How many people got into distribution? Hardly any. It was very easy to function. I look at it as a degree of difficulty. The generation sector, the degree of difficulty was very low. The distribution sector, the degree of difficulty was very high. And the return of investment was almost the same. So any businessman looking at it would just tilt the scale heavily towards generation, and that's what we have. Everywhere we keep talking about generation, we talk about 70,000 megawatts in this 5-year plan and so on. The imbalance between generation and distribution has been growing and is getting worse as far as I see. You go back historically and look at investments that others have made in the world, you find the same amount of investment goes into generation as what goes into T&D. And you look in India, you will see a major imbalance between the two. So I think we need to correct this imbalance, and it's going to take a long time. I don't think you can correct in 3-4 years whatever has been done in the last 30.
All the IPPs and merchant power players are showing poor financial results. NTPC's net profit has also taken a hit, rising only 1.12% in 2010-11. Power producers are living in an extreme dichotomy. On one hand, country talks about acute energy shortage, and on the other, power producers do not have buyers for electricity.
Yes, we have too much focus on generation. So you have all the power producers and IPPs who have put in money into this thing. You will have power which will be available, but no takers for it. Because finally, I think you said it, that the whole economy, the economics of the power sector depend on distribution sector. And I think the challenge continues to be there. That if we are not able to resolve the problem of the distribution sector, the generation sector, the NTPCs, the IPPs, the merchant power, all of them will go through major trouble.
I think we find that in the electricity sector in our country right now, the State Electricity Board for the last 60 years has been operating in a market called monopolistic market. Under the monopolistic environment of the structure of the market, simple economic theory tells us that these SEBs have been charging the price which has been greater than marginal cost. Now, if you are charging the price which is greater than marginal cost, which means what? That the SEBs are generating the power at an unit cost which is greater than marginal cost, which means either the productive efficiency of the plants of the SEBs are high or productive plants because of the low plant load factor, and secondly, the price that they are charging is not a market driven price, is the price which they decide on the basis of their budget requirements or the subsidies or whatever they want to perpetuate in times of crisis. When they find that there is a deficiency of power in the rural sector, they will provide cross subsidies. So all these elements, plus the cost, the inbuilt cost, depreciation, all that will built into this. So we find that the pricing policy of the SEBs neither follows the cost price mechanism policy nor the market driven policy. So therefore, whatever the regulators tell them, they decide that price. That price is not a remunerative price. That price is not a very cost competitive price. We find that the whole kinds of the tariff rates which are being announced by the regulators, right from all the state governments and central governments, does this reflect the cost? Does this tariff rate reflect the cost? Then we have a debatable question. Then the DISCOM says, no. The cost of purchase of power, which is 80% of the total, is not being reflected in this. And we are not getting that tariff rate which really gives us a nominal rate of return over the investment that we are making it. So that stakeholder is not happy. Consumers are not happy. Even the government itself is not happy because of the supply constraint. Now, Mr. Bhargava was talking about T&D loss. So I agree with him that T&D and the AT&C, these two cannot be considered as a good parameter for attracting private investment into the electricity business. Why? Because private investors, they go by their own parameters. They look at the macroeconomic fundamentals, which are very weak right now. Interest rates are going up very high. Inflation rates are going very high. It's a dear money policy. So the private investors will find that the money that would like to invest into this electricity sector will not give them return, adequate return as compared with other markets, So what I'm talking about, that a state electricity boards, their financial position themselves have become bankrupt. Even the net worth has been eroded in the balance sheets. Even the ROI, if you look at the ROC, which is now -1, barring 3-4 SEBs. Now, how long they will depend upon the budgetary support of the government, state government, and why the state government should finance those sickening, dying, and really, of no use of those electricity boards which are really being 100% dependent on the state government.
Dr. Deo, it clearly shows that reforms, including the Electricity Act 2003 and the creation of Independent Regulatory Commission to improve the financial viability of the power sector, have not worked. The power sector is starved of fuel, cannot levy and realize realistic tariffs, and is overseen by state regulators.
We are actually addressing what has gone really wrong in the implementation of 2003 Act. There are certain elements. Most important element is that we know why the Orissa model failed. It was a World Bank model. The idea was that you will divide SEB into generation, transmission and distribution. Orissa has completely failed because they have created Gridco, which is a single buyer model again. Now this is same thing happened. Haryana, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, all they have created distribution companies, but again they have got one single buyer model, single buyer. Same thing is the political issue comes is now the privatization of distribution. It is not that the private sector does not want to. Private sector, the whole idea of why the World Bank spends so much money on the consultancy, they tried to create that there should not be only concentration of urban. Urban and rural should be divided so that it could be privatized. And that's how we are talking of a different kind of a public-private partnership, which is the franchisee model. What happens in the franchisee model? It is a governance issue. When the distribution companies find that certain areas they just cannot handle. Best example was Bhiwandi. Bhiwandi had a losses reaching 60%. Collection efficiency was less than 50%. So what do? You invite private sector and say that this is a contract arrangement. You take over. This will be the input-based franchisee. We will pay you so much. You will have to give us this much money. You have to handle that area. Privatization will be desirable. It is a governance issue. But it's not going to happen. Just saying that you give it to private, it is going to be most probably immediately is going to be franchising. So these are the issues which we are facing today. Obviously we need to move ahead and take some bold steps. But we have to decide where do we go. And what we felt at the Forum of Regulators, the easier thing would be go for a franchisee model. And open access has to be pursued. But for the open access, the important thing is your cross-subsidy surcharge and your standby charge. These are the two important. They have to be rationalized. They can't be very high charges, because if there are high charges, open access will not happen. Will not happen. That is the position here we stand.
We'll quickly take a small break here. You keep watching Power News.